Very good. I think last time, just to kind of recap, Marco of Red Hat had presented on not only a little bit about Istio CNI, but also specifically about and some enhancements that he was trying to make. I don't know that he was confident that those would merge into the project, but that's what we spoke about last week a fair bit. Or not last week, but the last time we met a couple weeks ago. Anybody out at gRPC conference? Everybody's calling in from the conference, are they? Okay, good. Okay, with that, maybe we'll see if other topics come up. But so all of you, understand that 1.1 is here. It is available. Mitch, there was certainly some enhancements and fine tuning around performance and scale. Do you want to take us through those highlights?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So there were two basic questions asked at our previous meeting. One was if we were going to be updating our sizing guide for perf and scale on Istio 1.1 anytime soon. And I can report that, yes, we have updated that with the release. I will drop a link into chat momentarily to the istio.io page for performance and scale, which has now been updated for 1.1. Specifically, there was some interest in how much CPU allocation was going to be needed per 1,000 requests and whether or not we were going to meet some improvement targets that we had originally talked about for 1.1. And so to that end, I'm publishing the Istio performance dashboard from our release qualification cluster for Istio 1.1, which shows that for policy, telemetry, ingress gateway, and proxy, we're all hovering right around 0.6 vCPUs per 1,000 requests, which I believe meets or exceeds the goal that was set several months ago. So I'll be posting both of those links in chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And make sure I captured that correctly. You were saying for overhead for policy, telemetry, and ingress, we're hovering around 0.6 millicore CPU?
Sorry, 0.6 CPU, so 600 millicPUs per 1,000 requests.
Okay.
All right, so I'm dropping. Let's see. So that first link is to Rain Tank, where you can actually see both the vCPU and the memory per 1,000 requests. And I have misplaced the second link, but momentarily I'll have the istio.io perf and scale link as well.
Okay, very good. And Mitch, maybe for those who aren't familiar, the hosting of this dashboard or the population of it is coming from which environment?
This is a cluster that's running on GKE that we used for release qualification of 1.1. The particulars of exactly what is running on the cluster can be seen in the Istio tools repository under the perf Istio install and perf load folders.
All right. Is
second link with their updated documentation.
Very good, and then of the tests that were run, I suppose some of the spec for those tests are there as well. 1,000 requests per second, is that pretty commonly used for much of the testing?
Well, so it's not that we were running only 1,000 requests per second over the cluster. I think at the time this was collected, we were running somewhere around 80,000 requests per second. So we take the total vCPU and divide it by the number of requests per second. Or divided by the number of thousands of requests per second, to be particular. And what we find is that as we scale up from 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 requests per second, it does seem to remain fairly constant. Not that there's no deviation at all, but that we do not see like a continual growth pattern. It's more sawtoothed in terms of vCPUs per request.
Okay, very good. And we've got the updated docs as well. And then Mitch, if you recollect, just for the benefit of the rest of the community, off the top of your head, some of the other enhancements that tuned performance, either around namespacing or default number of millicores assigned to sidecars.
I actually only just joined the team in December, so I'm not sure what actually has changed since the prior release. I don't have that context.
Okay, got it. No problem. Yeah, very good. Very good. It is, I guess, as we're kind of hunting for topics and looking for the community to digest some of these numbers, do maybe an open question to is how much of a concern is performance for folks? I know the perf and scale community meetings that meet every other week are well attended. For those that are using Istio, have you run into issues here or concerns?
And it would also be great to understand what aspects of performance are of concern.
Yeah. And so, just in reflecting on some of the tooling in the space, the 4.0 being kind of part and parcel to the Istio project, its ability to measure latency and throughput, are two things to be measured, but certainly not the only things to be measured. Overhead of CPU and memory of the nodes in the cluster.
One of the particular focuses of 1.1 that I can speak to in terms of performance was performance for very large clusters. In Istio 1.0, every Istio proxy received a full graph of the mesh. So even for services that there was no path for a particular proxy to talk to, it would still have configuration for that. With the introduction of namespace isolation, as well as the sidecar CRD, we see much better scale in very large clusters, talking about thousands of services or more.
Is anyone on the call running a 1,000 service cluster? Something to puff your chest about if you are, so. Very good, okay. All right, and maybe instead of picking on Mitch so much, for others who paid attention to those performance and scale enhancements in 1.1, anyone have a favorite in there? As you're thinking about that, and maybe as we go to wind down this particular topic, this topic is a bit near and dear to my heart, just in having gone around and having given some workshops on Istio. It's a fairly common question of what the overhead is, what the performance impact is. And so there's been a project that started a couple of months ago to help enable the general public, if you will, or adopters with a tool to help, with just additional tools to help test performance of your applications. So the tool, I'll list it here and link to it. It may or may not be of interest to people, but certainly relevant to the performance and scale conversation.
I know for us, we're currently blocked on adopting it across larger services as far as total request rate goes, total throughput. I haven't seen large numbers or like numbers for what some of the largest throughputs that some people are able to get.
No, great. Yeah. Mm, 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 mm. And so, and then I guess just to repeat that part of your interest was, hey, of those larger numbers, what are what are some of those results? How high have people gone?
Yeah, I'm curious to know, like, yeah, what like as far as total throughput for a cluster, request per second.
So for the most part, what I've seen in working between 20 and 120,000 requests per second, I don't see a lot of things that are not scaling linearly with CPU, which leads me to think that if I was willing to spend more on my cluster, I would expect that about 10 times more spend should get me about 10 times more throughput. I don't see any artificial limit to that in the numbers I've played with. I do hope to push the 200,000 requests per limit number in the next couple of weeks without changing too much on the cluster. So we do see some improvements coming, but there's nothing that seems to be scaling exponentially as we grow. Because with this particular service config, there are particular ways you can configure services that do lead to exponential growth and cause problems. But I don't think there's any artificial limits there.
Is there any documentation on what those are? Like, I mean, we're using MTLS with RBAC. Like, is that what you're talking about, or is it other things?
No, if you're asking about the things that will cause worse than linear scaling, that's particularly going to be at the moment 2 services, each with a very large number of replicas communicating with one another. In that case, each service will need to know about the entire service graph of the other service, which is an exponential scaling algorithm. We are looking at algorithms to limit the impact of that and to mitigate that. But it is sort of a corner case at this point. It's not something that we hear from a lot of people that they're having trouble with.
Thank you. That's actually very encouraging. So thank you.
So I know that in the testing that we've done as part of the release qualification, we tested it at 100,000 requests per second in a mesh. And I think Mandar is actually going to join, who is the performance lead. Do you know what your scale is, Matt?
We'd be looking at somewhere between 150 and 200,000 requests per second. So it doesn't sound out of the ballpark from what it should be able to do.
And how many services is in that mesh?
Right now we're trying to keep the clusters fairly small. They mostly service external traffic, so it's fairly easy to keep a small number of services within each cluster.
Can you give me an order of magnitude?
For number of services in a cluster?
Yeah.
Oh, like 10, like very small.
Okay.
And is that the depth of your mesh, or is it but like 10 services total with like a depth of say 3 or 4?
How do you mean?
So a typical path through is that.
Okay, yeah, it's fairly shallow. It's like 1 to 2. So.
Okay.
Awesome.
So ingress to one service to another service, and that's normally it. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Mandar, I called out the 100K number.
Yep.
And just before you joined, Matt, who was bringing this up, had mentioned that their meshes, they're very small. They're like 10 services with a depth of 1 to 2, but they're pumping 150 to 200,000 RPS through them.
Okay. That's in the same ballpark that we've tested. So that's great.
Matt, are you seeing? You said you were blocked by this. Did you actually observe a problem, or you were waiting for these improvements that we just made?
Yeah. So right now we're not running 1.1 in production, and so we're not doing this level of traffic in production right now. on Istio.
Okay. The Mandar, probably the 1.1 will be a significant improvement for them, right?
Yes, so 1.1 would be a significant improvement. You would still need to make sure that you size Istio telemetry correctly and all that. So we have all that documented now on Istio.io. But yes, as long as you make sure that things are sized correctly, it should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you so much.
And they're also using RBAC. So does that go through the same Istio telemetry, or is that a different service?
No. So we have also tested with Istio RBAC, and it adds very, very little to the actual path length. So it should be almost no kind of discernible change in latency. And again, very, very small CPU cost.
Matt, one additional question. Are you actually running any form of policy, from an API perspective, or, so you obviously have telemetry, but are you actually running any specific policy checks?
Not yet.
Yeah.
We're planning on building that out more.
So just so that I know, is this you're planning to do it through Mixer, through Istio policy, or is it going to be more RBAC, Istio RBACs that you're going to deploy?
We want to build out a service-to-service authentication system that's built on the Envoys and the RBAC system. So it'll be
Okay.
in addition to that. So we're not going to be using, I think, RBAC rules too extensively, but there'll be some.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. I guess, Mondar, just before you joined, to facilitate some conversation and to help educate the rest of the community, and one of the questions we had asked was just, what was your favorite performance and scale enhancement in 1.1? And I know you've got a litany of them off the top of your head, but
So one that did really help quite a bit was the namespace isolation or the sidecar resource, and it did help Pilot's own scalability. But more importantly, what it did was it drove down the memory consumption on proxies. And if you take things in total, that's actually a much bigger win, because sidecars are everywhere. You have thousands of sidecars, and if all of them shave 50 megabytes, then that's a lot of saving in terms of memory. And of course, there are many others, but if you just want one, that's it.
Oh, very good. And then I guess just Mondar, maybe for those who aren't familiar, the namespace isolation enhancement is to say that as Pilot is updating, Sidecar is updating Envoy with where services are and the policy, and checking that begins to be done a bit more intelligently on a per namespace basis.
Right. Yes. So there is a good talk about the sidecar resource, which enables namespace isolation. So sidecar resource is the resource, and isolation is kind of the feature. But essentially, that's what it scopes down the amount of config that we send to individual proxies. And by default, the scope is a namespace, and you can actually scope it down further. So for example, if your namespace happens to have 4,000 services, and we have actually heard this, some customers do that, then you can actually scope it down further, especially if you have already modeled what services call what other services. It's fairly easy to take that data and convert it into sidecar resource, which actually expresses that. And then Pilot can use that information to make sure that all proxies are tailored to only receive the configuration that they need, which is even a smaller scope than a namespace.
Hey, Mandar, I have a question. Are some of these scale configurations that are tested, are those documented somewhere or on GitHub?
Yes, they are. So if you, so there are a couple of places. So on the revamped Istio performance page, there is a link to the, yes, that correct. So if you go there, the default configuration in load testing actually does give you, so everything is contained in, so if you get set up large tests, yeah. So
Yep.
So all these tests are fully reproducible, and we're adding more tests here, and we're actually so this is a good time for me to mention that we are actively asking the community to add kind of more scenarios here. So I would be very much interested in getting more PRs here that stress different parts of the system, and then everything should be measurable. So we're kind of building towards that, where every scenario should be distilled down to a few metrics, few summary metrics that you can track over time.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular, so there is a load test. If you go back up one, I don't know who's driving, but yeah, if you go back up one, there is also a benchmark. So benchmark test is the one that deals with latency, right? That's checking what kind of latency we get, and it is testing baseline, single sidecar, and double sidecar. So again, these are more scenarios, and I would definitely love if we get more PRs here that go through more scenarios like these.
Yeah, okay. Just what I want to do with this, I think, is then go and compare this to some testing. We did some pre-1.1, like RC sort of testing, and we found a lot of improvements to memory consumption, but that seemed for us in our environment to be mostly because of the reorganization of the statistics that like Envoy was collecting and all that sort of work. It wasn't myself who did it, so you're hearing this sort of hearsay, but we didn't see as much of an improvement from the namespace isolation as we were hoping. So I think what we should do is we should go compare what we did to the scenarios here and see. And yep, okay, thanks.
Yep. Oh, who's speaking? By the way, I don't.
This is Andrew. Andrew.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mondar, I'm glad you asked that. I had that as pegged as Sean, but I had it wrong. Very good. And then for those of you who joined a little bit late, it's your misfortune that I'm standing in for April today. She's out at gRPC Conf, so bad jokes and all are here. So this is good. It's good to see, I think, especially for leaders like Mondar and others in the perf and scale group, you're focused there, just how much interest there is on those tests. Sometimes those are those are the boring jobs, but performance testing is hard. A lot of variables, gotta get it right. So if you want to buy Mondar Starbucks, I think he'll accept.
Yes, and more Istio adoption as well.
Well, as we go to potentially call for other comments on performance tooling, Mondar, actually, I was just mentioning to the group here and kind of to you as well, this tool Meshery. We'll be presenting this at KubeCon EU, and hopefully some results in combination with the efforts that are that you're leading. We'll see if how much that tool helps the masses. Potentially one that is has a decent user experience, but maybe doesn't go quite as deep as some of the tools that you guys are running. And so, other comments on 1.1 maybe just in general. Anyone? So certainly some of you on the call have helped with release validation. Certainly some of you have downloaded or are running it. Comments in general, features and functionality that you like.
So I just want to make another comment, if it hasn't been made yet, is that there were several changes and they're all documented. However, I just want to mention that Istio policy checks, right, are disabled by default. So if you were using mixer policy checks in 106 and you are upgrading to 101, then just make sure that you re-enable or you explicitly enable policy checks in 1.1. Again, this is there in release notes and everywhere else, but I just want to reiterate that.
And so just to make sure we're capturing that correctly, Mondar, that's not only for fresh installs is our policy checks disabled by default, but it's also the case that if you're upgrading from 1.6 to 1.1, you need to go, and you're using policy checks, you need to go re-enable.
Right. Yes, that is correct.
Other comments from the community on 1.1? Mondar, that's very helpful. Maybe I should ask it like this: who has not yet using 1.1? Maybe that's the pressure that needs to be applied. So. Good. All right, very good. Let's see. We've got a few other prominent community contributors and users out there. As a matter of fact, one of maybe my better liked enhancements in 1.1, I think, was the embracement of Kiali. Kind of looking at you, Matt, on the call. I think we demoed Kiali on this call some time ago.
Yeah, I think we had a demo of Kiali on this call a while ago, but I think it's been a while since we've shown what we've been doing there. Kiali was also, I think, included in some of the later releases of 1.0, if I'm not mistaken, but it's definitely in 1.1.
Yeah, very good. And then Jay, you brought up a good question. The question in the chat there is, was there a performance impact to enabling policy checks when there aren't any policies? Or maybe re-articulate, what was the reason for disabling policy checks by default?
So I think Mandar had to drop off, but I can speak to it. So the policy checks were a significant latency addition, and most clusters were not actually using them. So we were doubling the per hop latency by doing the policy check. And because it was the default, most folks didn't even know that this is what they were incurring. So disabling them means that the default behavior, which is the most common thing, is much faster. And for anybody who wants to, who is using policy checks, they can turn it on. There's some architectural improvements that are gestating that will cut down on that latency hit when you are using policy checks, but that's future stuff.
Very good, thank you, Sean. And then I guess maybe just to re-articulate that, to confirm for Jay, if you aren't, even if you're not using policy checks, the disablement of them is you would get that performance increase.
Correct. That's the key, is that even if you didn't have any policy checks enabled, the envoys don't necessarily know that fact when they go to do the check. So they were doing the check and they always got a, yeah, let the request through answer. So even if you had no policy at all, they were doing the policy check unnecessarily. And that was costing a lot of perf, a lot of latency. So this way, the common case, which is no policy check, no policy is enabled. You don't need to check for policy. The common case is this fast latency.
Can policy checking be enabled for just those proxies that need to have policy checks?
That's a future feature, and the thought has occurred to people, but it doesn't. Oh, you mean could you one by one address the proxies in config? I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. Like I know that the thing that got introduced was a global setting. Is there a per proxy setting? I'm not sure.
Right. Okay.
Very good. Okay, very good. We're a little over halfway through. Lots of talk about 1.1, performance and scale specifically.
Lee?
Yep.
This is Riggs. I just wanted to take the opportunity and thank everyone in the community that helped us update the docs for release. Anyone in the community that participated in the doc day and just in general, helping us update and making sure that our tasks, our examples, everything was, well, functioning and technically accurate for release. So thank you, everyone.
Nice. Yeah, very good. Woo. It's no small undertaking.
It was a big effort. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Lee, following up on the question about enabling policy checks for only a subset of envoys, it does look like this is a mesh level setting. So that is unlikely to be something that can be set per proxy today.
Got it.
Okay. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah, very good. All right. What other topics do we have today? We've got quite a few folks on. While you're thinking of those, I'll randomly call out with Christian, who just asked the question, Christian Posta. Christian, you've got you've got a book in progress, Istio in Action. There's an early release.
Yeah, Lee, that's correct. Thanks. Yeah, it's an early access. About half of the chapters are written. So if you go to manning.com/Istio in Action, you can see what the table of contents looks like for it. And I am working as diligently and as quickly as I can to keep it moving. Nice. And Lee, you have your own book. What's going on with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So mine is in combination with Zach Butcher, and it's being done through O'Reilly. O'Reilly isn't quite as hip as Manning, it seems. So there isn't an early access kind of live release. That's a cool platform Manning has. So Istio up and running is the O'Reilly book that we're working on, and we're to be draft complete here in about 3 weeks. So come hell or high water, I guess.
Very nice. Congrats.
Just along those same lines, this is Ram from IBM. We have a Istio 101 workshop on GitHub in the IBM repo, and yesterday we updated it to Istio 1.1.
Very nice. You want to put the link in the chat, maybe?
Yeah.
Beautiful. What other community updates do we have? So, who's headed to KubeCon EU?
I'm going to Service Mesh Day next week. I have a lightning talk on multi-cluster Istio support that's in 1.1.
Very good. Okay. Wait, say a bit more about your lightning talk. Actually,
it's about the additional multi-cluster options that are coming in 1.1. Basically, going through the gateway for multi-cluster support.
Yeah, very good. Ram, I don't know if just randomly, I'll pick on you just since you spoke up, but I suspect there's a bit of confusion out there about some of the terminology of kind of multi-cluster, split horizon.
Yeah, cluster aware routing and gateway aware, and yeah, that's definitely the case.
Christian, we may want to collaborate on trying to get that written in stone correctly, or conveying using the same terminology. Actually.
Yeah, I agree. Let's try to connect sometime soon, next week or so.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Lee, I'll chime in here on the when we're talking about events. If anybody has any Istio events they want added to the Istio calendar, be sure to you can send a note my way and I can add those. We have KubeCon and Service Day, of course, are up there. I've been trying to be pretty diligent about adding any meetups that come up, but if there's anything else you see that's not on the calendar, shoot me a note and I'll get it on there.
Nice. Oh, very good. Anyone here running a meetup? Anyone? If you are, I would certainly take advantage of Zach's offer. Anyone actually is kind of curious? I think someone, now I forget, had suggested that maybe there be something of an Istio ambassadors club. And I suspect that would be made up of various folks, some running Istio meetups. Anybody running an Istio specific meetup or service mesh meetup? Archie, I'm looking at you.
Not yet right now, but we are planning to organize Cloud Native Days Canada in June, and we want to include the Istio track, so people who want to present about Istio will try to align some spots for them specifically. So if anybody wants to come, it's cloudnativecanada.ca.
Oh, wait, okay, wait, cloudnativecanada.ca.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's what I'm seeing, at least around North America, that I haven't seen too many Istio specific meetups, that they're mostly kind of folding into talks at either Cloud Native meetups or Kubernetes meetups.
Okay.
In the Boston area, we did start an Envoy proxy meetup, but I didn't see too many of those either.
Krishna, it's probably an accurate reflection. I organized the Docker Austin and the CNCF meetups here in Austin, Texas. And yeah, of the service mesh related presentations that have been had, they've been folded into like an existing CNCF meetup or a Kubernetes meetup.
Yeah.
Someday they will.
Yeah.
So Zach, it sounds like you might have your first couple of customers there. The Istio calendar.
Yeah, sounds like it. A few to add here. But I'm going to say that, Christian, I think you have access to the community calendar yourself, so you can probably add that one. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm really dragging this out. The 1.1 update was fantastic. Sounds like the Envoy-based meetup in Boston that Christian highlighted. Sounds like there's always speakers welcome there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to try to organize the first meetup coming up pretty soon.
All right. Well, let me ask this, since we did talk about performance as much as we did. This particular tool, Meshery, I think I mentioned before, will be presented at KubeCon EU, but of those that have taken a peek, is there a desire to see a demo of that maybe on this call at some point in the future? Or maybe I don't know that in the past that we've replayed KubeCon Istio presentations here. More just.
I think that would be useful. I think that would be useful.
All right, there's a plus one. Well, what else? What else do we have? Who else has got things going on other than gRPC Conf? Everyone's very pleased with how the open source licensing around Elastic and AWS's offerings are going. So, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, okay. All right, so we're on a bi-weekly cadence here. April will be back next time we meet. Fortunately, no one swore on today's meeting since it was recorded, and I didn't say that earlier. But all right, last chance. Any other topics you want to talk about?
Actually, just real quick, one thing that I was kind of excited to see was that Istio is now supporting the Envoy's secret discovery service for delivering identity and delivering secrets to the pods without having to mount them into the pods themselves and without having to issue private keys and so on across the network. So if you go check out the docs on issuing identity with SDS, it's pretty good.
Did you find the docs useful? I'm interested because I helped write them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought they were good. They kind of clearly explained what was going, what were the challenges, and why we moved to that implementation. So I thought it was good.
Okay, awesome.
And actually, we use those docs to kind of help frame. At Solo, we work on some complementary projects to Istio. So, for example, one of them is our API gateway, and we were able to very quickly integrate with Istio's SDS to be able to plug in our ingress gateway, and the documentation gave good explanation for how and why. It was good.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
Rig, speaking of hard work that goes somewhat unacknowledged, we talked about performance, but yours doesn't go, gets used more than you think.
Yeah, dogs are kind of in open source that unsung hero or very visible enemy somehow.
Docs are what help make projects successful. So all of the work that you put in for that is being repaid many times toward people coming to the project.
That's the goal, making everyone's life easier.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Archie, I got the wrong link to Cloud Native Canada, but if you'll take care of that, it'd be good. Maybe we'll see some of you at Service Mesh Day next week. If not, we'll see, I think, all of you again here in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming today. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Thanks for hosting, Lee. Thanks everyone that joined.
Thanks for leading, Lee.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Lee.